केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिम् द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशम् तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलम् सर्वधी साक्षिभूतम् भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि. Nityanandam, genocide. Never again. Genocide is one of the greatest crimes against humanity, a crime which continues to happen to this very day in the year 2021. Over the past several centuries, various indigenous tribes and peoples across the globe have been tortured, enslaved, slaughtered, and killed in barbaric ways. Some of the genocides you may be familiar with are the Jewish Holocaust of Germany, the Rohingya genocide of Burma, the Armenian genocide, the genocide of the Yazidis of Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, the genocide of Native American Indians, the Darfur genocide of Western Sudan, the Rwanda genocide, Ethiopia Tigray crisis, and the Uyghurs of China, and the list goes on and on. For those who survived, the haunting experiences remain etched in their memories, not only individually, but for those generations to come. But what's missing from that picture? Does anyone know? The answer: the Hindu genocide, the Holocaust of the indigenous Hindu minority traditions called Sampradayas, those who walked, lived, and worshipped on this planet for thousands of years peacefully, now on the brink of extinction, 800 years and counting.
Nithyanandam, today, with the blessings of the sovereign state of Sri Kailasa and the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Jagat Guru Mahasannidhanam, His Divine Holiness Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, we welcome each and every one of you on this very significant day. December 9th marks the International Day of Commemoration and dignity of the victims of genocide and of the prevention of this crime, as declared by the United Nations.
Her Excellency Ma Vijayapriya Nithyananda, Permanent Representative of the United Nations from Kailasa, as well as delegates of Kailasa, Ma Nitya Katitananda, Ma Nitya Mahakatitananda, and myself, Ma Nitya Satantra Priyananda, welcome each and every one of you, and we thank you for being here.
And today we are honored to have with us two esteemed guest panelists. Dr. Melissa Kapoorji, Oxford-trained scientist, devoted Hindu, speaker, and entrepreneur. Nityanandam, and welcome to today's panel. To Ms. Lorelei Higgins, Métis Canadian cultural mediator, Rotary Peace Fellow, and Positive Peace Activator. Nityanandam, Tanchi, and we welcome you to today's panel. Thank you, both of you, for being here and joining in Kailasa's panel discussion, and for taking the time to really contribute to today's discussion. We would also like to thank all viewers who have tuned in. Please do take a few minutes now and share this live discussion with all your friends and family, which is being live streamed on Nityananda TV across 80+ countries, as well as on various social media channels. Get your kids, get the youth involved, because today will be a tremendously enriching, thought-provoking, solution-oriented, and empowering discussion that no one should miss.
And as Ma Nitya Katitananda raised earlier, the Hindu Holocaust, despite being the largest Holocaust, is still unknown to the world. And personally, growing up, I have not once read about the Hindu genocide in history books, which is actually quite shocking, as the Hindu genocide is a stark epitome of a campaign of race extermination through ethnic cleansing, over 400 million lives, forced relocation, double killing through genocide and genocide denial. Hindus are the victims of the double killing of Holocaust and denial of Holocaust. Denying the largest Holocaust, which has shockingly been going on since 8 centuries of modern history, will continue to go on in the future unless it is first cognized and then corrected. But for that to even occur, the first step is telling the world about the real history. So the question is, who today exposes the unbroken continuum of annihilation of Hindus?
So the question is, who today exposes the unbroken continuum of annihilation of Hindus? The answer, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Jagat Guru Mahasanidhanam, His Divine Holiness Bhagwan Nithyananda Paramashivam. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the sovereign of the sovereign state of Sri Kailasa and a bold human rights defender and visionary. For the past 27 years of his public life, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism relentlessly worked from the very grassroots level to usher in an era of peace at all levels, individual, societal, national, and global. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has been exposing the Hindu genocide and building a safe haven for persecuted Hindus at the risk of his own life.
At the young age of 3, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was already recognized as an incarnation of Paramashiva by his predecessors of masters and adepts. At the age of 16, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was coronated to establish Kailasa worldwide. And in 2015, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was elected as the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism by a congregation of over 1,000 Hindu leaders or pontiffs. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is a spiritual leader of the 2 billion Hindu diaspora worldwide.
The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is coronated as the 233rd Guru Mahasanidhanam Pontiff of Kanchi Kailasa Sarvanyapitam, Tonde Mandala Adhinam.
The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the 1008th Acharya Mahamandaleshwara, the head for all spiritual leaders of Atal Akada, the ancient apex body of Hinduism.
The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the present 293rd Jagat Guru Mahasanidhanam Pontiff of Kailasonata Shamala Sarvanyapitam.
The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the present Mahamandaleshwar, the supreme spiritual head of Maha Nirvani Akada, which is the largest apex monastic order.
The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is also the present 23rd Guru Mahasanidhanam of Dharmamukti Swargapuram Adhinam, and he is also the 203rd Emperor of Surya Vamsa Surangi Samrajyam.
The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has dedicated his life to serving others. For the past 27 years of his public life, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism sincerely worked to provide an enlightened ecosystem for communities all around the world. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the reviver of the ancient Supreme Order of Kailasa, which comprises 49 spiritual orders of monks, nuns, and Hindu diaspora, working around the world for global peace and to give superconscious breakthrough to humanity.
So genocide does not only refer to mass killing or torture, as most would think. The word genocide was first coined by the Polish lawyer Raphael Lemkin in 1944. It consists of the Greek prefix genus, meaning race or tribe, and the Latin suffix "cide," meaning killing. Lemkin developed the term partly in response to the Nazi policies of systematic murder of Jewish people during the Jewish Holocaust, but also in response to previous instances in history of targeted actions aimed at the destruction of particular groups of people. Later on, Lemkin led the campaign to have genocide recognized and codified as an international crime.
Genocide was first recognized as a crime under international law in 1946 by the United Nations General Assembly. It was codified as an independent crime in the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, also known as the Genocide Convention. The convention has been ratified by 149 states as of January 2018. The International Court of Justice has repeatedly stated that the convention embodies principles that are part of the general customary international law. This means that whether or not states have ratified the Genocide Convention, they are all bound as a matter of law by the principle that genocide is a crime prohibited under international law.
As per Article 2 of the Genocide Convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or part, a national, ethical, racial, or religious group as such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about physical destruction to the group, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group into another group. However, genocide includes many other elements, such as lawfare, which includes denial of one's citizenship, character assassination, and hate speech, brainwashing, forced religious conversion or forced indoctrination, rape, child abuse, and others.
According to Dr. Gregory H. Stanton, founding president and chairman of Genocide Watch and former research professor in genocide studies and prevention at the George Mason University, Virginia, there are 10 stages of genocide. The process is not linear. These stages can happen simultaneously. So there is classification, which refers to categories to distinguish people into us and them by ethnicity, race, religion, or nationality.
There is symbolization, which is distinguishing the others by the use of names or symbols.
There is discrimination, which is the use of law, custom, and political power to deny the rights of other groups on the basis of nationality, ethnicity, race, or religion, which includes right to citizenship. Lawfare is also a form of discrimination.
Then there's dehumanization, which refers to one group denying the humanity of another group. Members of the group are equated to animals, vermin, insects, or diseases.
Organization. Genocide is always organized, usually by the state, often using militias to provide deniability of state responsibility.
Next is polarization, which refers to hate groups and extremist broadcast, polarizing propaganda to drive the groups apart. The dominant group passes emergency laws or decrees that grant them total power over the targeted group. The laws erode fundamental civil rights and liberties.
Preparation. National or perpetrator group leaders plan the final solution. They often use euphemisms to cloak their intentions. They indoctrinate the populace with fear of the victim group, disguising genocide as self-defense.
Persecution. The victim or the group's basic human rights are systematically violated through extrajudicial killings, torture, and forced displacement.
Extermination. Extermination begins and quickly becomes mass killing, which includes mass rapes.
Finally, there is denial, which lasts throughout and always follows genocide. It is among the surest indicators of further genocide.
The Hindu genocide. We cannot ignore the Hindu genocides anymore, which is still happening as we speak. We cannot ignore the 400 million lives and counting eliminated. We cannot turn a blind eye to the fact that there used to be 10,000 Hindu sampradayas or traditions which peacefully coexisted and thrived for millennia, which have almost been completely wiped out, with the remaining few on the brink of extinction. If you didn't know, Hinduism was in fact once practiced freely in over 56 nations across the continent, from Afghanistan, India, Nepal, Burma, Sri Lanka, all the way to Singapore, Malaysia, Cambodia, and Indonesia, as well as in 200 states, 1,700 samsthanas or provinces, and 10,000 sampradayas or traditions. But over the several centuries, the combined forces of foreign invasions, political upheaval, colonialism, and religious persecution systematically ended the millennia of Hindu Swarajya or self-rule.
As shown in this illustration here, 40,000 temples looted and 400,000 nationalized. Today, Hindu temples remain in certain countries, but the Hindus who worshipped them have been ethnically cleansed. Over the past 2,000 years, the Hindus have been subject to mass murder, enslavement, multiple perpetrator rapes, child abuse, forced indoctrination, man-made famines, loss of territory, imposition of slavery, and identity distortion, resulting in a systematic physical elimination. Another fact we know today is that to complete cultural elimination, invaders have attacked the institutions which preserved Hindu knowledge, the Hindu universities and libraries. This means 10,000 universities and colleges destroyed. Universities and libraries have been burnt to the ground, such as the Nalanda University. Nalanda University was so vast, it was reported to have housed 9 million manuscripts. Can you even imagine when set on fire, Nalanda University burnt continuously for over 9 months?
So, considering these facts, it's extremely crucial that on this International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of Crime of Genocide, to also recognize the genocide of the Kashmiri Hindus, the Bangladeshi Hindus, the Pakistani Hindus, Bengali Hindus, the Sri Lankan Tamil genocide, and the Mopla massacre of Kerala, just to name a few. So now let us watch this short video where the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism speaks directly on the horrors of the Hindu genocide, the horrors that the Hindus have endured.
I want everyone to know Hindus have suffered too much of persecution in many nations. Hindus have not suffered just Hinduphobia, We suffered Hindu hatred, Hindu-mesia. Please understand, Hindus have not suffered just Hindu-phobia. We suffered Hindu-mesia. We should change the word. But unfortunately, we are crushed so much, we are not even able to tell the world we are being crushed. We have not even chronicled our persecution story, the Hindu genocide, and told the world.
Hindus have not just suffered Hindu-phobia, we have suffered Hindu-mesia. And these were the direct words of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Jagat Guru Mahasanidhanam, His Divine Holiness Bhagwan Nithyananda Paramashivam. And over the last 30 years alone, the genocide of Hindu minorities in the regions of Kashi, Bangladesh,
Apologies for the technical glitch. Yes, as Nitya Katitananda shared, over the last 30 years alone, the genocide of Hindu minorities in regions of Kashi, Bangladesh, Kashmir, Gujarat have gone more or less unnoticed. Until recently, after many centuries, the silence is now being broken. December 2nd, 2021 marks a huge breakthrough for Hindus worldwide, as on that day, the United Nations invited Kailasa Nation to speak on the persecution of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and the Hindu minority traditions in India during its 14th session of the OHCRC's Forum on Minority Issues. The session took place in Geneva, Switzerland. And one of the many reasons why this is a huge breakthrough for Hindus is that it exposes to the world how the persecution of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and of Hindu minority traditions in India is a direct continuum of the Hindu genocide. And today we would like to share the video recording that is marking history.
Madam Chairperson, esteemed delegates and colleagues, I represent Kailasa Nation led by Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, which speaks on behalf of 2 billion Hindus around the world who do not have a voice representing them in these international forums. I want to specifically bring to light the attack on minority Hindu traditions. Hinduism, as people know, is not a single monolithic religion, but it's made up of thousands of unique enlightenment ecosystems, which are called sampradayas. In recent times, many Hindu gurus, Hindu minority traditions and temples have come under attack by majority ideologies, and a large number of traditions have virtually disappeared. There has been no recognition of the attacks by international human rights groups, as in these cases, it is difficult for outsiders to distinguish the attackers from the attacked. For the past 10 years, the Kailasa Nation and HDH Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam have been attacked and silenced in India as a religious minority, as a linguistic minority, and because extremist elements are opposed to Kailasa's stance when it comes to the rights of women, including marginalized Dalit women and the rights of members of the LGBTQ and transgendered communities. In 2019, Kailasa approached the OHCHR presenting the case of persecution, and when this document reached the Indian media, a very well-funded defamation campaign was started by news sources which were supportive of the Union government, alleging treason and sedition on part of the Kailasa Nation. A number of false cases were subsequently registered against Kailasa leaders, and one of our university campuses for women in the state of Gujarat was razed to the ground in a matter of days by mobs along with the local government. Kailasa has since submitted a number of reports on the persecution to various forums available within the UN, but not much action has been taken. In June 2021, Kailasa made a submission on the attacks of ASMT women in the session by the UN Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women on the Rights of Indigenous Women, and further submitted reports how to end femicide and on gender justice. Later in September, Kailasa's report on media disinformation in India, which is a big problem, was accepted by the Special Rapporteur for the right to freedom of opinion and expression.
So this marked a huge breakthrough and a moment that will go down in history, and one that will be remembered forever. So now we'll be entering into the exciting segment of today's program, the panel discussion, which has been much awaited. Why is the Hindu genocide still happening? Why are minority traditions still being persecuted, tortured? What is being done to put an end to this? Well, we are about to find out, and we'd like to once again warmly thank and welcome our two esteemed guests, Dr. Melissa Kapurji, Oxford trained scientist and devoted Hindu, speaker and entrepreneur, and Ms. Lorelei Higgins, Métis Canadian cultural mediator, Rotary Peace Fellow, and Positive Peace Activist. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. Dr. Melissa Kapurji has a DPhil from the University of Oxford in statistics applied to medical imaging. She now has an award-winning company developing novel technologies to help reduce incidence of dementia. Since first stepping onto Indian soil, Dr. Kapurji has felt a deep connection to India. Now married and having become a devoted Hindu herself, she takes great interest in understanding various aspects related to Bharat and Hinduism and expresses her views through her YouTube channel, English Bahan Ki Dil Se. Thank you, Dr. Kapurji, for being here.
We also warmly welcome Mrs. Lorelei Higgins. Mrs. Lorelei Higgins is a Métis Canadian cultural mediator, a Rotary Peace Fellow, and Positive Peace Activator, as well as a Governor General's Canadian Leadership Program alumna. She has worked on community-based projects, locally and internationally, with government agencies, non-government organizations, and the business sector. These projects have centered on peace and conflict transformation, Indigenous matters, and the elevation of female voices in leadership. Lorelei has worked across the globe in communities in Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, and South America. Lorelei is the community lead for the City of Calgary's anti-racism program and is working to advance the City of Calgary's commitments to truth and reconciliation. Lorelei has an MBA with a specialization in leadership, and she facilitates asset-based community development sessions utilizing an appreciative inquiry lens. Lorelei is also a consultant with Mediators Beyond Borders International. Lorelei is passionate about creating bold, open spaces for building peace through cross-cultural learning and the establishment and nurturing of enduring positive relationships. As Mrs. Canada 2021 and a Women in Need Foundation ambassador, Lorelei is leading efforts to increase female leadership and peace-building efforts locally and globally. She's often found adventuring around the world with her family. Mrs. Higgins, it's a real pleasure to have you with us today.
And our first question is for Dr. Melissa Kapurji. Welcome. Dr. Kapurji, why do you think Hindus, Hindu saints and leaders, and Hindu indigenous minority traditions have been targeted, not just in the past centuries, but still today?
Thank you. And thank you very much for inviting me once again. So a very interesting and important question. So we all know that Hindu Dharma, it reveres everything in nature, sees divinity in everything, and therefore Hindus worship a multitude of manifestations of Brahman, and that includes many different avatars and also Bhagwan in the form of murtis. Now, the Abrahamic religions, they believe that polytheism and idol-based worship is an abomination. In the Bible, the Quran, you can see that it's clearly written that idolaters are destined to burn in hell, where there is gnashing of teeth and all sorts of horrible things to happen to us. And that it is their duty to save us from hell by either converting us or by killing us. And speaking to other Hindus who have converted from Christianity or Islam, particularly those in India, it is common practice for them to be referring to us Hindus as kafir and heathen. And now these are very dehumanizing terms, but this is common everyday language for them, very unfortunately. Now they use this idea that it is their duty to convert or to kill us, to justify their discrimination, their mass slaughter, their rape throughout history. And as we know, Christianity, it has wiped out the Red Indians, the Incas, the Mayans, the pagans. Islam has wiped out other ancient civilizations, the Persians, the Arabians. And as we've just been hearing, Hindus as well, they've tried their very best. Hundreds of millions of Hindus have been murdered, firstly by Islamists, and then the Christian colonizers came along as well. So over the last 800 years, hundreds of millions have been murdered, many more raped, tortured, horrific, horrific numbers. And then since Indian independence, a third force has come along that has been seeking, unfortunately, to destroy Hindus as well, and that is communists. Obviously there is a border with China, and China has very strong expansionist goals. But what they all share, all these different forces, is a hatred for polytheistic worshippers, people who worship idols. Now, hundreds of years ago, Islamists realized very quickly that if they were to be able to destroy Hindus in entirety, they needed to destroy the system that was enabling Hindus to be so strong, so brave. They would literally rather be skinned alive, and there are accounts of this, being skinned alive rather than being forced to convert to Islam. Or the women, they would kill themselves and commit suicide rather than be raped by the incoming Islamists. So their strength of conviction in Bhagwan, in the highest power, it gave them so much strength, and that strength was passed down through the generations by gurus, by teachers, the Brahmin people essentially. And for example, Kashmir up in the north of India was such a center of Hindu thought and learning that the Islamist kings, they realized that to destroy Hindus entirely, they needed to destroy all Brahmins in Kashmir. And we now know, the numbers of Brahmins in Kashmir now, the number of Hindus in Kashmir now, is really tiny. They have faced so many attempts of extermination and exodus. But still, Hinduism throughout India was too strong to defeat and to destroy entirely through this physical genocide, through killing. And so when the Christian colonizers came along, they came up with a different approach. Yes, certainly they did commit certain physical genocides as well. They did kill Hindus, but they took, in a more mass scale, a more subversive approach. And that is to convert Hindu leaders into essentially and this is quite a crass statement, but brown skin vehicles of Christianization, so that Hindus were being converted into Christianity without even realizing it. And thus the genocide, the Hindu genocide, continued through this sort of slightly more palatable way. They weren't being killed, their throats slit, their women raped as much, but in many ways it was even more disastrous because it was so effective, so sneaky, subversive. It is essentially cultural genocide. So they injected Christianity into the Hindu scriptures in their English translations. They enforced the English education system on India. They published authoritative research and propaganda to make the Hindu rituals seem very backward and very discriminatory. Now, the Hindu cultural genocide, as I said, was so effective and subtle that even today, there are many very large, in some cases, important Hindu leaders who are still pushing that very discriminatory ideology of Hindus onto Hindus themselves, particularly those in positions of political power, unfortunately. So they themselves are enacting cultural genocide on their own people. It's so sad. So we hear about every day placing restrictions on Hindu festivals, on the rituals that are conducted in temples, not allowing people to conduct their Hindu successions as per the lineage that have been carrying on for thousands of years, hushing up cases of temple and murti destruction. This is every day you hear about these cases and this isn't in the well-known papers. You won't hear about it there, but you'll hear a few people on social media in the local area talking about these things. It's not picked up by the mainstream media. Murders of Hindus and just general discouraging and undermining of the core Hindu practices. So the Islamists, the Christians, the communists, they're still directly contributing to physical genocide. As I say, you hear about murders, forced conversions, love jihad every day, but there's also this even more sinister, indirect cultural genocide, which is very sadly being enacted by many sort of mentally colonized Hindu leaders who are actually essentially being puppets of the Islamists, the Christians, the communists. They're the ones funding it. They're the ones flicking the light switch underneath all of this. And so very sadly, Hindus are being persecuted from left, right, and center. It's a very terrible, very sad situation.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Koshi. And I would also actually like to add to what you've said. One of the ways Hindus and Hindu leaders are being targeted in India is by the interference with the Hindu successions. And the main example is that of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagwan Nithyananda Paramashivam, he was coronated as per Hindu law and rituals as the 293rd Guru Mahasanidhanam, the Pontiff of Madurai Adhinam in Tamil Nadu in South India. However, he was illegally removed as the Guru Mahasanidhanam and was replaced by state-groomed Pontiff. And eventually, the Supreme Pontiff was forced into statelessness by the denial of his natural citizenship. So just to add, the persecution of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is not only the persecution of one individual, but being the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and the head of state of the only Hindu nation, Kailasa, this persecution on him is in fact a persecution on the global Hindu diaspora and a cultural genocide. And, being subjected to forceful conversions, massacres, demolition, desecration of sacred sites, holy places, and destruction of properties, torture, murder, and even, crimes against women and children. So many indigenous minority communities with clear, distinguishable linguistic, cultural, and or religious traditions have been victims of ethnic cleansing. And this leads us to our next question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kapurchi and Ambassador Vijayapriya Nithyananda. And on the 4th of July, 2021, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism shared a really powerful message, and it's being projected for you to read. And he says, and I quote, "It is fair greed, guilt is used, and the indigenous people are convinced that they cannot bring up their kids properly. And then the kids are stolen away from them. Then either they are brainwashed in the name of so-called assimilation or killed. I am talking because I personally suffered the extension of just this genocide happening to indigenous people. And it basically extends to the conversation we're having right now about the injustice and genocide of indigenous peoples. And in fact, indigenous minority women and children continue to face these horrible crimes and defamation. And in Hinduism, all women are not merely respected as equal to men, but rather worshipped as a manifestation of Devi Parashakti, the supreme primordial cosmic divinity. In Hinduism, young girls are worshipped from infancy as incarnation of Divine Mother. And her worship is considered to fortune and well-being. And there's a beautiful chapter from Mana that I would like to share. And it's a scriptural reference, which says, Yatra naryastu pujante ramante tatra devataha yatretastu na pujante sarvastatra phala kriyaha. And it translates, where women are honored, there the gods are pleased. But where they are not honored, no sacred rite yields rewards. So as indigenous people, we share many deep common threads, and our reverence and connection with nature, the understanding that nature is an extension of our being, our consciousness, the honoring of our ancestors, those who came before us, the roles and rituals and traditions play in connecting us to the divine, and many more. But unfortunately, this genocide has also been one of them. So our question to you, Ms. Higgins, when it comes to the violence, the systematic discrimination and injustice we're seeing happening, especially against women and girls of minority traditions, how much do you think is related to gender?
Nityayandam, namaste, and Tanshe. So, Lorelai Dishinakashun, thank you so much for having me here and for this important discussion. And I'll get right to answering the question. I know we don't have a ton of time, but I just really want to honor everybody on the call and all of those who've come before us, those we've lost, those who don't have a voice, and those that we're fighting for. My family was part of some of the genocide that's occurred here in Canada. And so it's just a really big honor for me that globally there are efforts to come together as Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples to work together for this. So in terms of the question, how much is related to gender? A lot of it. And so if we start to peel back history, and I'll speak specifically to Canada's history as a Métis Indigenous person from Canada, I'm rooted a lot in global understandings, mostly because I have worked globally as read by my bio, and I am deeply connected to lots of Asia, including India. I spent a long time working there up in Dharamshala with the Tibetan population there, and so feeling very connected to this work and to many people who are watching and listening. So gender, where does it play out? It plays out in absolutely everything. And when we start to look at a lot of what's been talked about, including organized religions over the centuries, especially Western based and European centric religions. A lot of the religions have been focused on diminishing and eradicating female power. You know, whether we look at the witch craze, which occurred a lot in Europe and across the globe, but that idea of labeling women healers and people who had the ability to do spiritual things as witches, we can go back to that. Specifically in Canada, when we look at our history of colonization and assimilation, there is such a gender representation of women that have to today gone missing and murdered, including girls. So we had a report that came out recently in 2019, because as we started looking at our Truth and Reconciliation across Canada, and many of you who don't know it, in 2015, we shocked the world and we shocked ourselves when Canada was formally admitted to cultural genocide of Indigenous peoples. So if you haven't read it, we do have a report. There's 94 calls to action, but the story doesn't end there. And so recently, you know, we've wondered how many children were actually killed during our residential school system. We know that around 150,000 kids went, but those records were never kept properly, and some are still being asked to be brought forward from the government and the church. But at an estimate right now, we know that 150,000 children were taken forcibly from their homes. In terms of gender, we don't have a clear and full picture yet of how many were girls, but we do know that in the schools themselves, the residential school system, which is part of the eradication and genocide of women, girls, and boys and men, essentially we do know that the stories are coming out now that babies and women and children were burned in the furnaces in the residential schools. So when we start, if we could actually find accurate data on that, we probably would find a really high percentage of that being young girls. So as we kind of look into that in Canada's dark history, we see, you know, we're starting to find the first remains of children in the mass graves. And when we had our Truth and Reconciliation report, it was estimated that maybe 3,400 children had died. Our elders always said it was much, much higher than that. So as we've started to have the technology to uncover these mass graves, many of you have heard in May, we found the first 215 children buried in a mass grave, and that was in Kamloops, Canada, in British Columbia. And so as that's happened, it started this steamrolling effect where more and more technology is being used. We are up to almost just over 6,000 bodies being found, but we have been told through our Truth and Reconciliation Commission to expect at least 25,000 children, but those are the only ones that we may find. So that being said, when we look at our dark history in Canada and what we've done to our Indigenous population to eradicate it, when you fast forward to today, and what does that mean for gender? We have a significant number of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. And right now, with the report, it does say, you know, maybe the numbers are in the 2000s, but a lot of people are saying it's 4,000. We can't get all the records, they're unaccounted for. And a lot of people are saying it's a lot higher than that. And so with the inaccuracy of being able to get the data, we don't have clear numbers, which means the story's not being told. And much like the information we're sharing today around what's happening to our Hindu population, and especially Hindu women, we're learning that there's a lot of power in things being hidden and truth not being told. And so one of the things as we learn about gender and we learn about the misrepresentation of women and girls in the information around Indigenous peoples going missing and murdered, we know the numbers are high. And so I just applaud everybody on this call who's listening, everybody who's being part of this panel and this presentation, and the Guru himself, because without truth, we can't take action. And in Canada, our residential school system started in the 1800s, and our legacy of colonialism started more than 500 years ago. But it's only now, sitting here today, that we're learning truth and we're learning numbers. So I just applaud everybody for that desire for truth and for speaking truth, because without it, we can't move forward and we can't shed light into the darkest corners. And so in summary, to my very long answer to your question, absolutely gender is a huge part of it. And I would say a lot of that has to do with the power and the ability that women have had in the past to lead entire societies. A lot of Indigenous cultures in Canada were matriarchal societies. And as patriarchal societies took over, women were a threat to that. And so the best thing you can do is take away that power and reduce the numbers. So thank you for the opportunity to respond to that.
Thank you so much. A little technical difficulties, if you all can hear me. But thank you so much for that very insightful sort of view and the data. It's really amazing to know about the work that's a very important point that women in the past, indigenous women, they held quite a lot of power. And I think because of this, they have been targeted. And there's a beautiful quote where Swamiji shared, and I'm paraphrasing. Essentially, he said, if the world were ruled by women, the society and the world would have been a much better place, because as women, we are natural nurturers and thinkers of the whole. So I would like to thank you so much for that contribution and sharing your perspective on this topic.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. And our next question is for Dr. Kapoorji. Dr. Kapoorji, so the question is, when one Hindu guru, one sampradaya or tradition is attacked, why is it so important for other sampradayas to stand up and protect? What are the repercussions when other sampradayas choose not to get involved?
Thank you. And another very interesting and important question. So the guru-shishya relationship is so integral to Hindu Dharma that an assault on Hindus, on sampradayas, which are true to the Hindu Dharma, Hindu tradition, as per the Shastras, is actually an assault on Bhagwan, on the highest authority. And it is absolutely unconscionable that other gurus and sampradayas that they choose to ignore in almost all cases, it seems. And so I sense very much, because I am very active on social media, that there is a rising disappointment, even anger, among some Hindus against some of the more silent Hindu gurus and political leaders who are choosing to turn a blind eye. For example, the sadhus who were murdered in Palga. You know, during the lockdown, Ramayana was being streamed across India, the TV series. So such people were tuning into such beauty, you know, seeing the Ramayana on TV across the whole country. But at that very same moment, such terrible, terrible lynching, horrific, that was fortunately caught on camera for us to see that it was happening on these two very, very peaceful sadhus and their driver. Absolutely horrific. And still no justice has arisen. And it's fantastic that I saw in Kailasa's report to the UN that, you know, there is a section about these poor sadhus, because literally nobody has spoken out from the Hindu community, has spoken out for these poor people. So if Hindu leaders, gurus, cannot stand up for their own, you know, the epitome of Hinduism, the most peaceful people that exist on the planet, these sadhus, what chance does the common Hindu have? Now, who will speak up for us when we are murdered or raped or whatever? So we're feeling disappointed and angry in many of these Hindu leaders, these Hindu politicians. And if, you know, we are feeling abandoned, unwanted, you know, we will either lose faith in many of these gurus and potentially even lose faith in Hindu Dharma, you know, for allowing this situation to occur where our own leaders don't care about their people. And in both cases, it's leading to the demise of Hindu Dharma, isn't it? And as someone who is relatively recently converted to Hindu Dharma, I find that apathy even rejection of some of these Hindu leaders, of their own people, their own traditions, their own religion, actually the most off-putting part of being a Hindu. So things like many, I find Hindu leaders, Hindu gurus, very worryingly, they even reject the word Hindu. And I understand there is this complexity around the reason why the word Hindu was even, imposed on India. But they'll say, that certain Hindu traditions are not Hindu. That is very damaging when you're dealing with the rest of the world, because if you're wanting to make a legal case about being harassed for doing yoga asanas, for wearing bindi, and you hear, very prominent figures from Hindu Dharma saying it's not Hindu, you're losing the ability to fight a legal case, aren't you? Because suddenly it's just harassment. It's not religious hatred, which is actually what it is. And I feel often maybe some of these Hindu leaders, the politicians, they're doing it to try and be magnanimous, or to try and be very encompassing and welcoming of the world. But actually what they're doing is they're being foolish and cowardly, actually. They're being really truthful to themselves. They're being uncomfortable in their own skin, is how I certainly perceive it. Because the word Hindu, certainly if you're speaking in English, there is no other word really to describe it. There is only the word Hindu, unfortunately. So unless we put lots of pressure on to create a new word, to have Sanatana Dharma allowed into the English dictionary, then we're stuck with the word Hindu. So that is the uniting factor that we unfortunately have to work around. And if we are saying things are not Hindu, we're removing the credit of yoga coming from Hinduism and all these other things that many Hindu leaders sadly say are not Hindu, which is very unfortunate, very frustrating. And when they are saying that we're not Hindu because we're universal, well, then what's happening is you're trying to be everything to everyone, but in reality, you're being nothing to no one. You're becoming, if it's for everyone, it's nothing, right? So that encourages misappropriation. It allows Christians to say they are Bharatanatyam dancers, which we know Bharatanatyam is a sacred Hindu form of dance. It is an expression of Hindu worship. A Christian cannot perform it, frankly, at all. And things like yoga, as we know, yoga means oneness, merging with the infinite, with the highest authority, but it's used in many cases in such demeaning ways. For example, take the fad at the moment of gin yoga, having a glass of gin in your hand while you're doing yoga asanas, essentially. It's so insulting. And because many of these Hindu leaders, they are putting so much confusion, so much confusion into minds around the word, what is Hindu and not Hindu, not putting any barriers around, is allowing this discrimination, this insulting practice to be occurring. And as I say, someone coming from a different background, a Christian background, I find this the most off-putting part of being a Hindu, because it appears weak, it appears confused, it appears appeasing, when actually people respect strength, they respect conviction. So for Hinduism to survive, we need strong, proud Hindu leadership united around the Hindu Shastras and the sanctity of Bhagwan and Murtis and the core tenets of Hindu Dharma.
Yes, Dr. Kapoorji, that is very true what you just said. And that is why the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has founded Kailasa, the only Hindu nation. There's not one country today where Hinduism is the state religion. And Kailasa is the only place where Hindus can have political and religious legitimacy to be able to practice their religion without any, persecution. And, he's collecting all the scriptures, establishing the largest library just to revive all these traditions and cultures that have been lost, destroyed over time. And the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism actually said, in March 2019, that even Hindus are unaware of the extent and types of atrocities their ancestors have suffered and continue to suffer. The Hindu gurus and Hindu kings, both of them, they need to strengthen their sampradayas, their tradition, and tell their followers and citizens what their ancestors have suffered. And in this way, we are able to make the next generation aware of what have been done to our ancestors and prevent that from happening again. So thank you so much, Melissa ji. And the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism also said, specifically on the Guru Shishya Parampara, which is the Guru-disciple relationship. Hindu gurus who keep the Hindu ecosystems alive, who revive Hindu ecosystems, are the software programmers. They keep the software of Hinduism alive.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kapoorji and Ambassador Vijayapriya Nithyananda, for highlighting this importance of solidarity. As the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has told, when one sampradaya or one Hindu leader is attacked, it's not just that one sampradaya or that one Hindu leader that is being attacked. It is the whole Sanatana Hindu Dharma which is being attacked. So thank you so much. And this leads us into our next question, which I would like to ask Mrs. Higgins first. So in your opinion, how can we heal and prevent the ongoing genocide? What can we do as individuals and collectively as a society, nation, and world?
Marcy, thank you. That is a great question. And this is a significant part of it, is this coming together collectively and talking. In the past, it was illegal to gather in things like this. We wouldn't be allowed to even discuss it. And so think about that, the power we have and the ability to talk and gather right now, even online. And COVID has actually created this opportunity even more so for us to realize how we can connect electronically. So one of the most significant things individually, collectively, as societies, nations, and the world is leadership, is don't sit back, don't take the current state for what it is. Don't accept it. And I think often of my own grandmother who, the doorbell would ring and she'd be terrified that it was an Indian agent come to take the children away and put them into a care or a school that was not her own. And so when I think about her and the lack of voice that she had, and the fact that, the sash that I'm wearing right now is our Métis sash. It was illegal at one point to actually wear this. My grandmother never dreamed of the day that I could, as her grandchild, speak my language, her language, the language of our ancestors freely, or wear something like this in public. So the fact that we can do this is amazing, and we can't lose this opportunity. So the leadership that is required of each of us right now is to work together in solidarity, to also work individually to keep pushing. Where can we make change and speak out? Some of the other things that I think about when I think about, what can we do? I get that asked a lot in terms of Reconciliation Canada. People say, Lorelei, what can I do? And it's what I said earlier, sit in the truth, learn what's happened. We don't know everything that's happened, as mentioned earlier. We don't know what's happened to our ancestors because it's been hidden. And so keep digging, keep finding out, keep talking about it. But eventually, we need to move to action. And here there's a saying the elders call reconciliation. So actually sitting in truth and moving collectively in action. So as an ecosystem coming together and moving. One of the most important things that I see emerging in Canada that might be really important, and I see it on this call as well, is the importance of men and boys in this movement. So that as females, we aren't alone. We aren't walking and pushing, saying we need this or we need truth or we need action, but we're being upheld, and the movement is also being led by men and boys. And so one of the important movements here in Canada that I just want to share is called the Moosehide Campaign. And it really is being led by men and boys saying, how can we take responsibility for the violence and genocide that's occurring against our Indigenous women and girls? And how can we make things different, but how can we also be different in how we are males? And so that campaign is really significant. The big campaign day is actually coming up on February 10th. And if anybody wants to take part in it, it is global. And you'll see little pieces of moose hide, and there's a wonderful story about it. I encourage everybody to read about why it's a patch of moose hide and why you can wear it every single day to stand up against women, violence against women and girls globally. So the other things I think about, what else can we do? Where in local law can we make change? And as you all heard from my bio, I am all about system change. How do we actually change the structure we're in? How do we be more represented in government, in schools, in places where decisions are being made? When I was a lot younger, I used to try to get a seat at the table. And the only way I got to that table is another female brought me there. So as females and as males, where can you move over and bring somebody with you, one of the youth, so that you have the space, but you're bringing somebody along with you? As I got a little bit older, I was saying, thank you for this space at this table where decisions were being made. And you can imagine, as I've gotten older and bolder, I now have said, okay, I need some more space at this table. And I've actually asked, you need to move over. And I'm so bold now in the systems that I work in, where I'm helping to create change, whether it's Indigenous human rights or whether it's anti-racism work. I have actually told people that I need them to leave the table because we're here to lead. And now I've actually said, I don't need a table. I want to sit in circle. And so those are the things that I encourage each of you as you carry your culture and identity and who you are, is be bold, be brave, but don't do it alone. There's a million people on this call right now who are all watching, and come together and use the support network. Use all of us who are presenting on this call. We're here to support. So create that space and be bold, but don't do it alone. Be in community for that. So one of the last things I'll just touch on is, where can we create this change? What can we do? The United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous People. Here in Canada, we're continuing to have the conversation. How do you put that into local law? How do you actually move it from a declaration at an international level into local law? The bill was actually turned down at our Senate, and it came back because we are so determined to create change. You'll also hear in the news, as part of this sweeping change, the Indigenous peoples in Canada, we have been divided. And so when you hear about the Indigenous story in Canada, it's not unified. We have been parsed out into, you're Indigenous, you're not Indigenous enough, you're all of the different groups that have been created to segregate us and create the parts, so that we actually can't come together as peoples, but rather we see each other as a threat. So the Indigenous populations in Canada have actually come together, and there will be a delegation to visit the Pope to demand a formal apology for the role of the church in the residential school systems. And so use that type of action to figure out how else you can make change. And it was wonderful to see in the presentation the United Nations delegation that already occurred. So use all of that, sweeping movements globally, and we need to come together. It's really easy in this day and age to say this issue is more important than this issue. But why I immediately said to being part of this is I saw a collective, and it's been referred to in this call as an ecosystem, and that's what we are. We are stronger together. And so one voice doesn't matter more than other. Indigenous peoples across the globe have suffered. And right now, systems reflect that continued pushing down of Indigenous peoples. And so we need to come together, whether you're Indigenous, not Indigenous, whether you don't know who you are. It's really important that you stand up, you speak up, and you commit to working collectively to making change. So hopefully that helps. And the very last thing I'll just leave people with is, the more you can promote diversity as a strength, the more we'll continue to see across the globe how important it is to create cultural diversity and keep maintaining that which we have, and that it doesn't disappear. Diversity is not a weakness. Diversity is one of the greatest strengths this planet has. And the more that we can make people realize that, and how beautiful this diversity is, and how as diverse peoples, all of the ones on this call, we can come together and show our oneness, I think that's when we'll also start to see some more significant change. So thank you, everybody. We have a saying here in this part of Turtle Island. We say all my relations. And what that recognizes is the oneness of us all, the plants, the entire globe, peoples across the world, all my relations. I am connected to you. And in that, our fates are intertwined, much like Ubuntu from Africa. So thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to share my thoughts around that.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Higgins. I totally agree with you and the importance of diversity. It's actually the first time that I hear the word reconciliation. I think it's brilliant coming together. And like you're highlighting, you're giving the example of this very panel. If we look at each and every one of us coming from so many different places, coming together to speak out, but at the same time, while honoring our unique traditions and cultures. And you emphasize also the importance of diversity. And I would like to highlight the strength and beauty of Hinduism itself is that it celebrates diversity. And actually many of the people in the audience who may be listening may not be aware of the fact that Hinduism actually recognizes 11 genders, celebrates 11 genders. And so basically, you know, healing by coming together and, like you were saying, coming into the space of oneness, which is one of the founding principles of Hinduism, Advaita, a peaceful coexistence with all the beings. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and truly, truly beautiful. And Dr. Kapoorji, I would actually like to ask you the same question and hear your insights. In your opinion, how can we heal and prevent the ongoing genocide? What can we do as individuals and collectively as a society, nation, and a world?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Apologies, my baby's crying in the background. So individually, what Hindus can do to prevent the ongoing Hindu genocide is by ensuring that it doesn't become extinct. And by that, I mean, we need to be practicing as Hindus every day, sincerely and unapologetically, doing puja, worshipping the Devis, the Devas, and celebrating the festivals with full enthusiasm and sincerity. We need to be looking to our scriptures, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Ramayana and Bhagavad Gita, and emulate them truly, particularly the Kshatriya and the Bhakti traditions, which have been particularly squashed because of their ability to rise Hindus as a people in strength. And we need to be bestowing the gurus with our trust, with our respect, those gurus who are following the Shastras truly, because they are the ones who are the gateways to the Gyan. Just one moment, sorry, just one moment. Another thing we can do individually, I'll finish in just one moment. Collectively, I think I have to stop now. I'm very sorry, my baby is just having a bit of a meltdown.
So of course, thank you so much, Dr. Kapoorji. Yes, and highlighting what you shared about the importance of Shastras. Actually, so much abuse has happened because of the misinterpretation of the sacred scriptures. Basically, as you were telling earlier, you were saying how the misinterpretation has happened, and even sacred rituals have been portrayed as being discriminatory, which is not at all the reality. But this is what has happened. And so one of the very important works that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is doing is accurately translating all the ancient sacred manuscripts and collecting all of them, and not just those that are available, also the ones that have been lost. Because actually the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is downloading the knowledge directly from the cosmic archives, the Akashic records, through his Balasants, which are the children saints who are groomed and brought up in the Gurukul, in the Vedic education system. And so that is still possible. The knowledge is not lost. And it really, we're so blessed to have an avatar incarnation with us, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, who is able to retrieve that knowledge, which is available in the cosmic archives. So thank you so much, Dr. Kapoorji. And this is, yes, one of the examples, what I just shared is one of the examples in which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is protecting Hinduism, and which leads us to the next question.
So in the absence of Dr. Kapoorji, before we close today's session, we would like to take a moment to gather in this global forum with the thousands that's joining around the world to pay tribute to the victims of the genocide past and present. We stand in solidarity with all those globally who may be carrying the burden of a shared painful past, and even to this present day, facing the horrors of the ongoing genocide. And we would like to pay tribute to the Hindu leaders and gurus who have lost their lives or faced the sword of persecution, some of them even being illegally imprisoned for life. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism today is a voice for the 2 billion Hindus who have not had a voice in the past, and is living proof and a reminder that, quote, the ultimate cosmic law is ahimsa, non-violence. It is the most powerful, best strategy, even to stop the Hindu Holocaust, end quote. So we will now take a moment to share with you a very short video tribute.
And to all around the world who have lost their lives, faced tremendous suffering, and continue to suffer, you are not forgotten. Genocide never again will be made a reality. Kailasa Nation is committed to ensuring this happens. There's a beautiful, powerful message which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism shared with us, and he said, this generation Hindus, especially Hindu youth, learn the right history. Only if you become aware of the history, you will not allow the past history to repeat itself. So it is in our hands. On behalf of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and Kailasa Nation, we would like to sincerely thank you, Dr. Kapoorji and Ms. Higgins, for being here and contributing to today's panel discussion on this International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of Genocide and of the prevention of this crime. It was indeed a pleasure hosting you, and we wish you continued blessings and support as you continue the good work that you do. And to all the viewers, we thank you for your participation. And as the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism says, it's in our hands. So let's continue to march onwards and forward peacefully and powerfully with Guru, Paramashiva, and our ancestors in our hearts. We will now end with the closing mantra, the Purna mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Bhagavat Shri Nithyananda Paramashivam Padukarpanamastu. Om Nithyanandam.
Paramashivoham. Om Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Paramashivoham. Om Nithyananda 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 Paramashivoham.
Connecting with the divine with your eyes closed is meditation. Connecting with the divine with your eyes open is darshan. Come, let us all now move from meditation to darshan. Slowly, very slowly, please open your eyes.
அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் புவி எண்ணாத யோகமே கொண்டிட நித்தியன் ஈரேழு லோகத்திற்கெட்டா ஈசன் முக்தி நேரி அருளவே நித்தியனாய் ஊரகிற்கு வந்தம்மை ஆட்கொள்ள தேவர்களை காத்திட வைத்தான் தாயாய் பேரருள் புரிய உடல் ரோமம் சிறுத்திட நித்தியனாய் வந்து அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் புவி எண்ணாத யோகமே கொண்டிட நித்தியன் ஈரேழு லோகத்திற்கெட்டா ஈசன் முக்தி நெறி அருளவே நித்தியனாய் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தார் திருவண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தார். கிளப்பி விட்டேனில் பர தத்துவம் கற்பித்த பாரமஞானியாய் ஞானக்கண் கொடுத்த தமக்கே ரூபம் காட்டிய மாய வித்தை செய்யும் நித்தியன் கிளப்பி விட்டேனில் பர தத்துவம் கற்பித்த பாரமஞானியாய் ஞானக்கண் கொடுத்த தமக்கே ரூபம் காட்டிய மாய வித்தை செய்யும் நித்தியன் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் புவி எண்ணாத யோகமே கொண்டிட நித்யன் ஈரேழு லோகத்திற்கெட்டார் ஈசன் முக்தி நேரி அருளவே நித்யனாய் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் நித்யன் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான். பொருளான நித்யனை ஆழ்ந்து சிந்திக்க ஐயனின் ரூபம் விளங்கும் தாண்டும் சிவசக்தியாக ஐம்பொறிகளுக்கும் புலனாகின்ற நித்யன் பொருளான நித்யனை ஆழ்ந்து சிந்திக்க ஐயனின் ரூபம் விளங்கும் யாண்டும் சிவசக்தியாக ஐம்பொறிகளுக்கும் புலனாகின்ற நித்யன் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் புவி எண்ணாத யோகமே கொண்டிட நித்யன் ஈரேழு லோகத்திற்கெட்டார் ஈசன் முக்தி நெறி அருளவே நித்யனாய் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் திருவண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான். உள்ளும் புறமும் இருந்து உயிர் பக்குவமாக்கிடும் பரமனாம் நித்யன் ஞானப்பாடி தங்கள் ஏழும் கொண்ட ஞானமும் ஆகியே ஆண்டிடும் நித்யன் உள்ளும் புறமும் இருந்து உயிர் பக்குவமாக்கிடும் பரமனாம் நித்யன் ஞானப்பாடி தங்கள் ஏழும் கொண்ட ஞானமும் ஆகியே ஆண்டிடும் நித்யன் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் புவி எண்ணாத யோகமே கொண்டிட நித்யன் ஈரேழு லோகத்திற்கெட்டார் ஈசன் முக்தி நேரி அருளவே நித்யனாய் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் நித்யன் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான். வாக்கியங்களான அருள் கவிதைகள் நித்யனின் மகிமை சொல்லிடும் மகிமை அர்த்திக்க பின்னே சிவசக்தி ஸ்வரூபமாய் தோன்றிடும் நித்யன் அப்த வாக்கியங்களான அருள் கவிதைகள் நித்யனின் மகிமை சொல்லிடும் மகிமை அர்த்திக்க பின்னே சிவசக்தி ஸ்வரூபமாய் தோன்றிடும் நித்யன் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் புவி எண்ணாத யோகமே கொண்டிட நித்யன் ஈரேழு லோகத்திற்கெட்டார் ஈசன் முக்தி நெறி அருளவே நித்யனாய் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் திருவண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான். புண்ணிய கேத்திரம் தனிலே நித்யன் உன்னத நீலை ஊழத்தில் வருமே விண்ணவர் மன்னவர் ஒப்ப அகிலம் ஆளும் கீர்த்தியுடை ஈசன் நித்யானந்தன் புண்ணிய சேத்திரம் தனிலே நித்யன் உன்னத நீலை ஊழத்தில் வருமே விண்ணவர் மன்னவர் ஒப்ப அகிலம் ஆளும் கீர்த்தியுடை ஈசன் நித்யானந்தன் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் புவி எண்ணாத யோகமே கொண்டிட நித்யன் ஈரேழு லோகத்திற்கெட்டார் ஈசன் முக்தி நெறி அருளவே நித்யனாய் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான் நித்யன் அண்ணாமலையில் பிறந்தான்.